Welcome to the Women of Soul Aligned Business Podcast. I'm Joe Che. I am here with Gina Guddat. She is a nationally recognized relationship expert, licensed psychotherapist, helping people overcome challenges and build deep, fulfilling relationships. She's the author of the Relationship Roadmap and has over a decade of results-driven experience in private practice. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here tonight.
I would love to start out. This is 10 years, and my guess is the Relationship Roadmap is really a culmination of doing work with so many clients, seeing consistency, seeing patterns in these relationships. I'd love to hear more about that. Is it a framework? Is it a guide? What is that exactly?
Well, it did come out of the fact that there's only so many people that I could see in a day, in a week, in a month. And as my waiting list was growing, I realized, hey, there's some key components that I can put together in a format that's really easy to access for everybody in their own home. And you have to remember, Joe, I'm turning 60 this coming year, so I myself have gone through 60 years of a timeline of marriage and children, and now I'm a grandmother and have a bit of experience underneath my belt. I have people that come in trying to figure out if they should be together. Part of it was discernment. Is this something that's going to be a good relationship to begin with? As I looked at premarital counseling, they were already scheduled with an officiant to have a wedding. That usually is the first mechanism into counseling for a lot of people. If they're doing a traditional wedding, many times the pastor, the minister, the priest, the rabbi, whoever it is requiring them to have some kind of counseling before they blend their lives together. I thought we got to start way before that. So Relationship Roadmap goes back into, are you ready to get serious? Are you going to move in together? Because a lot of people live together before they decide to get married. Some people always live together without having that formal ceremony. So I go from that all the way through couples in crisis, couples having conflict. Communication is across the board, something that everybody needs to do. Connection, romance, intimacy, all the way down to conscious uncoupling. Not that every relationship needs to end by uncoupling, but we need to address that sometimes after a long relationship, people get going in different directions and they're not good for each other anymore. So amicably parting ways is something that I address, as well as putting people back out on the market. I have people in their 50s, 60s. I just went to a wedding with a couple who was in their 80s that had met on an online dating app and were getting married again. I write plenty of profiles for people for dating apps as well.
I have a framework called the connection map. The section I call the intention for life merging. Often the relationship is complicated. What I have found is it's almost always related to this intention of merging your life. Everyone has different life merge pacing. How fast before we're exclusive, how fast before we're moving in together or visiting our families. Someone is always faster than the other, and you need to move as slow as the slowest person, or that creates a lot of tension.
Yeah. Absolutely. When I talk to couples, one has cold feet, one wants to do the proposal, they want the ring, the clock is ticking, especially for women that want to have babies. You cannot lock something in until both are really sure about that commitment and feel confident in it. The first book that I wrote, Love Metabolism, talked about that exact same thing. What are people's needs and wants on the frequency, intensity, duration of all aspects in a relationship, and always someone feels that they're just not quite getting their needs met.
And then we learn how to use communication techniques to say that in a way that creates more connection instead of disconnection. When I'm teaching communication, I always look at 3 levels. There's the first level, which is the harsh one. It's very I statements or you statements, right? So in other words, you made me feel this way. Level 2 communication, nonviolent communication, which is I felt this way when it happens. But then the level 3 communication, I've written a whole bunch of free AIs on this, where you actually open up dialogue, you create curiosity, be on the same team instead of separating the you and I. It's like how do we do this? I'm curious your experience, and because I love you, I want this result, which is to feel closer. There's techniques that are really skills. One of the hardest lessons I ever learned is love is not enough. A brutal lesson that I think a lot of people have experienced is that there's skills necessary to be in a healthy relationship, right? I'm sure this is what you're working on with your clients and in these programs.
We're not taught that as children because most of our parents did not have that skill. Their grandparents did not have that skill. There was nothing that they learned in school about how to properly communicate with curiosity, not with judgment, not with blame, not with defensiveness. So we are starting in this new generation to teach which is like the foundation of getting along with each other. I had 10 couples today in my office, each one unique, but everyone with a communication breakdown of something or another. One couple got back from what should have been a wonderful holiday vacation, and I learned that they fought the whole time, and who was doing more of the work and who was carrying more of the luggage, who was carrying the baby more, who got the better sleep, who saw more of the attractions. It was more of a competition. It's described as what I hear daily in my practice.
I've experienced that myself and with working with others too. The number one predictor of happiness by a Harvard study of adult development is healthy relationships. In our education, how much of this were we taught? I don't think I was taught any of it. My parents put me in a private school, a religious school, and I'm grateful for that. But man, it's like there's home economics, right? You can learn some basic life skills, checkbooks and cooking, and we're not learning or being taught any of this. And it's coming from generally our primary caregivers and how they're interacting with each other. You know, they were not taught anything. They've figured it out the best they can, and they're doing the best they can to show. But like these skills are not out there. I always joke, I want to create a certification where you can't date anyone until you've learned certain skills. If you have this certification, it's like a gold star in the dating profile of like, hey, listen, this man has at least learned these skills, been exposed to these communication skills, understanding a woman's needs, understanding her cycles, you know, just understanding some things that without those, it creates a lot of tension.
Well, Joe, we're going to have to partner on this because I did just create a quiz on my website that says, are you ready for a real relationship? It's only 5 questions, but I think we need to do a second one together, specifically on communication skills, because what you're saying about parents, it's not just that, it's that our entire society is based on competition. We're trying to get the best grades. We're trying to measure up. We're trying to get picked for the team. We're trying not to get cut from the competition. We're trying to win the tournaments. We're trying to be hired on the interviews. We're trying to get accepted into colleges. And all these things are really based on winning and losing. So it's not surprising to me when a couple comes into my practice and a lot of the banter back and forth is about who's more right, who's more wrong, who's got the best point of view, whose opinion is backed more on the research, which ones are feeling based, which ones are analytical. And it's all that competition that really is in our society. Like instead of being together on things and realizing, well, there's always more than one way to do things and 2 truths can be happening at one time, that just blows people's mind. My truth is always the one that's more truthful. And so this competition, I just think it's weaved into our society.
It's so true. And it's also, we're competing for these mates. We want the prettiest, smartest, successful, tallest, whatever it is. And notice that a lot of people are looking for these check boxes. It's like an idea, and they're all rooted in beautiful intentions. If a woman is looking for a man that's successful, what she's really looking for is safety. She wants to feel safe for her and her family, that they're going to be provided for, or that if a man is tall and has a 6-pack and all these things. I remember reading this really funny study about the 666 man, over 6 feet tall, makes over 6 figures, and has a 6-pack. Have you seen this one? When they did like how many men are actually out there that fit this profile, and how many of them are single. And then the question becomes, how many of them are a good fit for you? And it was just some astronomically low number. When we approach these relationships, we don't tend to come into a place of ease and happiness. It's really why I developed the connection map. It's a visualization of a connection, it has 4 chords, and you can see where you're high and low in each part and compare it to your partner. It helps create conversations. One of them is your communication ease. Another one is your task ease, which means like how easy can you do when they went on that vacation? How easy do you perceive it being for you? Because I realize I'm neurodivergent, so sometimes I struggle with connection and communication. I've had to really dig deep and learn these skills for myself to be able to make good decisions and see where things are going wrong. I want to take your quiz. I love that you got 5 questions. Mine are definitely a lot more than that. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes. I had to look and say, why isn't this working? I met a woman from Sweden. I was facilitating there, and amazing connection. And when I took the connection map, it kept saying, your lifestyle alignment's too low. And I'm like, she'll move to Bali and see this amazing life. And maybe I'll visit her in Sweden. And we did that for 6 months. Ultimately, we had to have the conversation in this uncoupling process. I have a free uncoupling process at my website to exit with as much love as you came in. That is a real hallmark of a true connection that has unconditional love, regardless if it leads to a family or marriage. If you can do that, both your skill levels is probably pretty high.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always say the opposite attracts thing is a myth. It is very intriguing for us to get to know people that are exotic or different. But as you mentioned, the similarities are going to create the easiest bond. Even though we see all kinds of people mixed together in my practice, it does ring true that if you have someone who is paleo and gets together with a vegan or a vegetarian, while you're making a lot of different meals for your kid, it could be an interesting way of exposure, but it is more difficult, right? It's double the work in the kitchen. You can have a Hindu marry a Muslim or a Christian marry a Jew, and it's great for exposure for the kids. But again, you're doing double the holidays, and it's just a little bit. I just tell people you need to find another, because otherwise you're asking your partner to adapt, or you're not being true to yourself. Sometimes you are making commitments to do things that aren't true to your character in order to make it work.
It's interesting. I did a podcast with David Hayworth, this naked pastor, and he's very in the Christian realm and works with a lot of people in that. What he was finding that was very interesting, and there's some other research that backs this up, that the different religions actually can mix together if there is a deep respect for each other's belief system. It's not the religious philosophy, but the underlying core values associated with the individual. For example, if someone values freedom or open-mindedness and the other person has or doesn't have that, that tends to be a good indication on the alignment section, of what I call the alignment section in a connection. I thought that was really interesting, because you would think if a Christian is with a Jew, it's going to cause a lot of tension and problems. But what people are actually finding is it's really about the underlying core values. If those are similar, the expression of those ideas can be compatible. Your kids get a lot more holidays, especially if you're a Christian. Lots of time off, lots of time with the family, which I think is really beautiful. These core value alignments, which many people are not talking about as they're entering into relationships. I recently was exposed to a book by the Gottman Institute called 8 Dates. It's so funny. I was writing the same book with my friend Kasha Nas, because I'm like, we need to know the questions you have to ask before you get in a relationship. The woman I'm dating shows me this book. I'm like, oh my God, this book is already done. This is great. Going through that, there are questions you can ask each other that will uncover and create conversations to figure out, like, hey, listen, I'm attracted to you. I want you. This is fun. This feels really good. Good, practical match in alignment to be what I'm calling a golden relationship, because I want to get away from the words the one, Mr. Right, because it has a lot of context in the fairy tale Disney. I'm sure you can attest to. It's not very real.
It's not one soulmate. People want to believe that. When I'm putting people on the dating sites and helping to teach them how short a meetup should actually be and what an interview looks like. You get to know someone just seeing who they are and being open to not judge them, but looking at a lot of material out there as amazing human beings. When I teach people this, I say, I know you're not going to like hearing this, but 7 out of 100 probably could be a good match for you. And they're like, only 7 out of 100, but then again, I have to date 100 people. I'm like, no. They're buried in there as you go through the algorithms of this and the number game in this. You can try to praise someone into your sphere, or you can work the numbers of trying to meet up with 100 people and find those 7 amazing, wonderful golden nuggets that are right for you. They usually come from that Disney, Hallmark, music lyric philosophy that there's just that one. They can spin a story about, I met this one person and it was just a divine appointment. Like I saw them when they were walking on the beach and we had the same breed of a dog. I'm not sure. You said no children and they have 10 kids. So it's really going to be the one for you. And it is kind of what you're saying is we have to keep our head on, but also open our heart.
That can be hard a lot of the times, especially as we get older. I'm approaching 50 and sometimes you go through things and your heart gets hurt. You go through a divorce, you get jaded, and opening your heart again is a difficult process, and it takes time and bravery to say, I've been hurt and I can open my heart again, be with someone in that presence, in that care, and come from a place of unconditional love as opposed to trying to get to a goal, because many people is a very true and beautiful desire to go into a deep partnership, to build a family, to have kids. But one experience I've had is I've dated some people that it feels like I'm getting more interviewed for a role than a connection. And that's really important to me. I want the connection to come first and from an authentic place and allow that connection to unfold into what it truly should be instead of trying to force it. Is this my partner? Is this my husband, the father of my children, my lover, just a friend or business partner? How do you be your authentic self and allow for that connection to be true? Do you have any advice for people on this? Because it's hard for us to do because we get so caught up in our goal orientation.
I think what you're talking about is there's both sides of the spectrum, right? There's keeping your logic on so that we're not swept away solely with emotion. Ideally, if you can get to know someone as a person before you jump in romantically, that would be my tip. Because we are a ball of chemicals, that's why we choose differently in our 20s than we do in our 40s, 50s, or 60s. Need that's just in us evolutionarily is part of us. We can't get rid of it, like our wisdom teeth. We don't need them, but they're there. So whether you want to reproduce or not, there is this primal attraction. With people, you actually aren't going to have a successful long-term connection. That's the tricky part. When you're a teenager and in your 20s, dopamine is one of the strongest things we experience. That was designed to get people to come together and reproduce and form families. Problem with that is that because it has one primary factor to itself, it does disappear fairly quickly, like 9 months to 2 years, it's gone. People think they've fallen out of love. They haven't. It just changes to oxytocin, a different type of bonding chemical for faithfulness, fidelity, and raising a family. But as we get older and more mature, I think we begin to understand ourselves better. We are looking for a true connection. Many people have already had their kids, or a lot of people, at least in the US where I live, are planning to not have any kids. That can't always be the factor we're looking for, but chemicals are definitely part of the mating and dating game.
Do you think they need to be there? Like how strong they need to be? Because when I was doing research, one of the threads in the connection map is attraction. What I was finding is most people think they want their attraction score to be a 10, the highest. What I'm actually noticing is for this golden relationship, this one that's very healthy and long-term and etc., we actually don't, when the attraction's a 10, it actually hurts and lowers some of the other threads. It's actually better to be somewhere between a 5 to a 7 in attraction, which is Because you don't want it too low and being like, I don't want to have sex here. I'm disinterested in that physical connection. But when it's just kind of good, where everything is flowing, you can do things together, that ease, communication, the alignment, all these other things are really good. The attraction is there. You do want to have sex. You do want to kiss. You do want to be affectionate physically, but you're not just like, oh my God, I need to have sex with you all the time, every time we get together. That tends to distract and overinflate some of these other threads of connection. I'm curious, what do you think it should be if you meet someone and you're like, yeah, they're good looking and I find them attractive. I'm not like, don't have that primal sexual craziness, but it's some there. Out of 0 to 10, where do you think it should be in that attraction as you're meeting someone?
I like your 7. I like the idea of 7 because people that are so physically oriented that way, in my experience, can experience jealousy and be insecure about their partner. If they're that attracted, they worry someone else is attracted to their partner too. And then you have this paranoia and you can get controlling and people are looking for cheating when it's not really there. I like Sternberg's love triangle. He did the first research that kind of, I think, initially coming out because the love definition was so vague unless you came more from a religious standpoint. In many religious tenets, they define like God is the only one that's unconditional love. They talk about agape, they talk about brotherly love, they talk about eros. But Sternberg came from more of a psychological standpoint with his love triangle, and one of the sides is the physical. And this would be love as defined as a relationship, right? Like a intimate relationship. Attraction is one of the sides of the triangle. The other side is the friendship, which has to do with shared hobbies, shared interests, shared values, purpose, upbringing, enjoying the same type of things together. The third side of it is that commitment, which is exclusivity. Now we have poly relationships, open marriages, but he defined it as, in religion, it would be the covenant. In law, it would be the contract, the marriage license. It's actually somewhat of the connection too. It's the promise you're making to show up for that person. When Sternberg took the triangle of love, he said, what happens if we just have two of the sides? Let's say we have the commitment, we're very faithful, and we have the friendship, but we don't have the physical. Then we have this platonic, amazing, very deep, committed friendship with a lot of shared hobbies, but no chemistry. If you have all the chemistry and you have the friendship and you don't have the commitment, you got cheating. You can have cheating lines. We have a lot of affairs. So any of those two sides put together equals something. Because you can have really strong commitment and you can have a strong physical sex life. But if you have nothing in common, what are you doing with your day? Except for having sex, there's nothing else you have in common. One scuba dives and the other runs marathons. And when I try to explain that to my couples, I say, think of it as a table, just like a coffee table or something, and it has 3 legs, and you chop a leg off, it's not going to stand up.
I love that visualization of the triangle. I agree with it very much. When we have that deep friendship, right, that's our shared core values, our lifestyle alignment. What I would say is, and I like looking at as the covenant or the contract, and I would also just add from a spiritual sense, it's just a choosing. It's just a decision that outside of a contract or a religious aspect, it's like, I am going to choose this every day. And the question becomes, how long do we choose it for? Because there can be this noble suffering that happens in relationship. Coming from a Catholic background, there's a lot of nobility in suffering. It's like the more you suffer, the more noble you are, the more godly you are. I've had to learn how to let that go and realize, no, is this relationship serving our highest good for each other most of the time? It doesn't mean you get out when you're going through a dip or some hard times, which sometimes can last a long time. But in general, is this connection helping me, allowing me to express my authentic self, or is it suppressing? One question I like to ask people is, do you feel more of yourself in this relationship? And when it's a hard no, we've all been there, right? You are suppressing who you are. You're compromising so much that it's not a good sign. That's one question I like to ask myself, and it can be a really interesting deciding factor. Without that commitment in choosing, it can be a beautiful lovership, temporary. It could be an untethered lovership where you're not intending to make that life merge. That can be beautiful too, but you got to make sure that you're really matched up on those, or that's going to.
It's interesting you bring that up because it was Tuesday of this week, I had a couple come in, both professionals, both working in the city in big tech. They are 31 or 32. They'd known each other for 4 years. They were going to get married. I think they're actually engaged. They have a yacht. They have a Porsche. They have everything. We were talking about what was the sticking point. What came out was the woman in this case could not be herself. And she felt like she was walking on eggshells to not say something wrong that would scare him away because she wanted it so bad.
Yeah.
She wanted the babies. She wanted the ring. She wanted the ceremony. And because of it, it was difficult. It was actually exhausting trying to live this life that wasn't her. She broke down in session, started crying, and she said, "I hate your mom." She said he was raised with a single mom and he had maybe an unhealthy bond with his mother. And that day before they came in, they had gone to a big concert. Mom was on one side and she was on the other. And he in the middle talking to mom. She said, "I just get his back. Mom's here for everything we do and every date. I try to be so sweet about it, but I hate that woman."
Sometimes we create this walking on eggshells for ourselves, and it's not even the other person. The concept that I call the high value paradox, or sometimes the hotness paradox. When someone's so attractive and so good looking, or has so much money, or seems like the perfect fit, we want it so bad that we suppress our true authentic nature to try to fit into what we think they want. We're projecting on that, and then we become less of ourselves, which actually hurts the connection so that we might not get it. You need to be with someone that you can be yourself with, and we can't blame it on the other person if we're not being ourselves. It's like we need to step up, communicate our boundaries, our desires, and be ourselves, because if you're not being yourself, how do we expect to have a good fit? Because you're fitting with someone else that needs a different fit, or they don't even get to choose if they can't even know, they don't know who you are, so they don't even know if they fit with you. It's just a reminder that we really have to show up authentically. I've made this mistake before. This woman, I was so infatuated, so gorgeous, 27-year-old Polish model, and so cool. She was so spiritual, and there was so many things that were so amazing about her, but I was suppressing myself to try to fit in and be part of her world. It doesn't work out because you need to be with someone that you can feel free. You don't want to be walking no eggshells.
No eggshells. This does remind me of another couple. Of course, I have a million case studies, but they came in and he was feeling like he couldn't be himself because he was a business owner. He was killing it with his business. He had franchised his business. He had offers from all over the place. And in essence, she was coming into counseling because she pegged him as a workaholic. She said he wasn't prioritizing the family, her, the kids, that he went to work at 5 a.m. He didn't get home till midnight. He was always on his phone, his computer. And I said, "Did you know this 15 years ago when you got together?" And she goes, "Well, yes, I loved his ambition. I loved his motivation. This is what I thought I wanted." But in essence, she didn't want a workaholic. That's what she got. That's what she set her intention. But in the end, she wanted a family man that was dedicated to drop everything at work and prioritize the family.
That's a hard one, because when you're looking at Alison Armstrong's journey of a man's journey between this page to knight to prince to king to emperor, so to speak, knights are sexy. That ambition, that drive, that strength, that white horse going out, conquering the world, exploring, it's sexy. They still want to prove something to themselves, to the world, to their partners. They're focused on building their sort of kingdom. You got to know what you're choosing. See, if you're a woman, you got to check where that man is in his journey and see if that's the right position. And if you're a woman and saying, "I want my king," you got to be a queen, and you got to learn these skills and being confident in yourself. Before you call in your king, you have to be a queen. I see this a lot in Bali, all these, I am calling in my king and I am the queen goddess energy. It's very spiritual, and it's like, honey, you're beautiful, you move great, you do a lot of dancing, you don't have your shit together, you're not stepping up as a queen that can meet someone in that place. There's no judgment on that, but we need to sometimes be self-aware of where we are in our journey. It's okay if you're young and you want that sexy man or that sexy woman and you want to have a great time. Great, go do that, but don't expect them to step up as a grounded father and a provider, because they're not in that stage. It's not what they want.
Nope, it's the conqueror state. I teach a lot about the codependent, independent, interdependent, and what that actually looks like. People had taught so long, don't be codependent on someone else, don't let them take care of all the finances. You have to also hold your own, or you lose all control. You lose any type of agency if you don't bring something to the table yourself, right? If you're just being taken care of. We had people becoming extremely independent where they were running parallel lives. I'm not saying you shouldn't just have two separate bank accounts or something like that. I'm talking about two separate lives with no connection, no crossover. I started talking a lot about interdependence, right? Like how to share your life but still not lose yourself.
So important. As soon as you lose yourself, there's no one left to connect with. You're showing up in the way you think you want someone else to show up, and it doesn't work. Thank you so much. If viewers want to find you, it's the best way, the Instagram or the website. I'll put it in the show notes. Who should be connecting with you? Couples that want to go deeper?
Absolutely. Couples in any stage of their relationship. If they're struggling with communication, I have several wonderful courses and modules on communication. If they're in a crisis, and it doesn't have to be an affair, it could be any kind of crisis. If you're having a crisis about where you're moving to, change careers because you have to be supportive of your partner, and that may end up creating a move in location. I have people come in because they lost their dog or their mother. Any kind of crisis, people get sick, they have diagnoses that maybe are unfortunate. Discernment counseling, is this too good to leave? Is it too bad to stay in? That kind of discernment is something that I talk about as well as conscious uncoupling, as you do. So couples can come. Like I said, I have free quiz on Are You Ready for a Relationship, which is if you're single. And then I have another quiz that's Rate Your Current Relationship. And these are both free on my website. So I'm excited to have some people take those quizzes, give me some feedback of what they scored, and that will help kind of direct them as far as their next steps.
I have a bunch of free giveaways on the connectionmap.com. I have an uncoupling process. I also have a quiz. I want you to try the quiz. Try yours right after. I'd love you to try mine. It's at the Connection Map. I would love for you to see the visuals and see what resonates, or if maybe you have some feedback of like, actually, maybe we need to add or take something away. I would love your opinions on that, because I just feel like this is your sole purpose and you are making money. You're in it. And it's a reminder that when we are in our soul purpose and doing what we truly love, we're working out of passion, we're making good money at it, and we're impacting people in a way that we're really supposed to be doing. It's coming from a real heart space. I feel that from you. I think that's really beautiful. Thank you, Gina, for being with us on the Women of Soul Purpose Alignment. Please feel free to connect with us directly in our social media or our websites. I answer all my messages personally. Thanks everyone for listening, and have a wonderful day.